Inside Track podcast. We've got a fabulous guest with us today, Giles Denning from PerformX. How are you?
Very well. Pleasure to be on, guys. Absolute pleasure to be on.
Yeah, no, awesome to have you, Giles. And obviously, my awesome co host, Russell Vella. How are you, Russ?
I'm very good, thanks, this morning. Excited about this one. Been to this event a lot of times over the years that Giles runs. So yeah, interested in digging a little bit deeper here.
No, absolutely. So, probably the best place to start and where we'll get all our guests to start is just to give a quick run through your sort of career. Because obviously, PerformX is massive now. And obviously, but that's not the only thing you've done. So, it'd be quite interesting to see what your career is and how you come to here, if you can, Giles.
Yeah, of course, of course. So I started my career right back. I was a plumber's apprentice when I was
Is
15.
that right? Wow.
Yeah, yeah. Which didn't last long. I didn't like being up on the roof in the cold. So then I went back to school, and it was good because I think it taught me hard work. It was with my dad, and it was a lot of early mornings, a lot of big shifts, and he's a very structured guy. So I learned, like, I'd say a lot of the skills are translated into today, and how I kind of, despite your role, you take ownership of what you're doing, kind of thing. That's very much his approach on the building site. Was like he became the site agent whether he was or not, and that's kind of, I think, how my ethos is in work. But after that, I went back, studied. Um, Always business and marketing style focus on my study. That's where I found that at GCSE and just really thrived in it, and
Yeah.
just found it didn't feel like studying. Everything else felt a bit dry and boring, whereas that just felt like it lit me up. So I went and did that at uni. I was lucky enough to get a placement year. I've never had a boring job, is something I would say throughout
Oh,
throughout
wow.
this. So what I got a placement year at a test track in Bedfordshire called Millbrook, which is where they test all the unreleased cars. So Top Gear filmed there a lot.
Oh,
James
wow.
Bond, James Bond filmed that stunt where they flipped an Aston Martin. They had to flip about 7 Aston Martins to get the stunt right. So it's just basically like this big exclusive like test tracks. I got a very hands-on role there in like a really small team where I was just, he's supposed to be sort of an intern, but he was like, I was this guy's number two, and there's only two of us in the team. So
Yeah.
really good, like hands-on experience, really fun. Um, then after uni, I went into the club company. So you guys will know them well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Own some prestigious golf and health clubs around the country, and I went in as their kind of, this was the early days of digital marketing. So we transitioning from postcards to email.
Postcards and letters and franking. I
That's
remember them
it.
days.
Yeah, right. And just sending mass mailers to warm people, to then, right, building a database, an ECRM structure and stuff like that. So that was a cool project. But because I was in my 20s at the time, I was really drawn to, um, I wanted to be, I can't explain it, but the next bit explains it. I wanted to just be in the buzz of things, and I that which drew me into nightclubs. And I went in, and I was a marketing role for a growing nightclub group for, I think I stayed in nightclubs for about 10 years. But
Wow.
yeah, it was great fun. In my 20s, it was like traveling up and down the country, opening different bars, opening different clubs. Taught me a lot, because nightclubs is different to fitness, in that fitness, especially then before boutique stuff, you just had to sell people in once and then they're stuck.
Yeah.
Whereas nightclubs, you have to stay relevant every single Friday, every single Saturday.
I can
Um,
imagine the turnover is quite high in a nightclub in terms of ownership as well. You quite often see them. They do the sort of 3 or 4 years,
that's it.
then it
Yeah.
changes their own hands and it kicks off again.
And we were quite clever in that we had new brands. So people get bored, and it's kind of a pattern where it becomes the place, and then the wrong people start coming because it's the place, and then that dies, and then the new place comes. Whereas we had a series of brands, so we could swap it out and
Oh, wow.
pretend it was the new place, but
Yeah, yeah.
completely kit it out again and go again. So it was like, but I enjoyed that, and a lot of learnings from like working with agencies and being creative and understanding how we stay on the pulse, stay relevant, week in, week out, kind of thing. So that really taught me a lot, and it's hard work. It's a lot
Oh, I
of
can
graft.
imagine.
It's working all Christmas, all New Year's Eve, all, they're your big dates and stuff. So that was great. Taught me a lot of high standards, because it was about premium quality brands. So taught me like, everything has to be to a good level. You can't put out any drivel. Everything's got to be like.
I can imagine in something like that as well. It's very easy to almost, if you don't keep those high standards, you almost become the dodgy nightclub in
Yes,
the
exactly. Yeah,
you know
yeah.
what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. The one people would laugh at because it's like, oh, look at this, free shots Friday or whatever it is. Yeah, exactly that, exactly that. Even
It's where
just
the
the
old
language.
over 50s go, and because they're not allowed in the different funky places.
Exactly.
Silly
Yeah. No.
for them.
100%. 100%. And then that's the beginning of the end kind of thing. So you're constantly chasing the weekly numbers being right, because then you can tell you're still on the pulse of the footballers being in there buying a big bottle. It was back in these days. It was bottle service and the
And I guess in that sort of field, then, Giles, how would you measure a trend? I guess, because I guess one bad week would be like, okay, we've had one bad week. What would generally be the okay, we're on the decline here. We need to be doing something.
Yeah, I think it's looking. I mean, we had teams constantly monitoring the numbers, but I think you are looking at versus like for like, and then you're looking at versus the estate. So you could see, okay, it's been a dodgy week, or Easter weekend wasn't as good as we thought it would be across the board. So that's not a red flag. But then it's like, okay, everyone had a big weekend apart from this town, this city, like what's going on there, and they didn't have a good New Year, that kind of thing. So you're kind of keeping an eye on it, and it might be a shift in management, it might be a shift in promoters. Do we get new promoters in? How do we spice it up? Like that kind of stuff. So it's constantly kind of looking. And then I think when I went into probably one of the best brands in that space at the time, which I worked for, I went traveling for best part of a year, and then I came back and worked for Be at One cocktail bars, and that was one of the best companies in that world. And some of the stuff they come up with was phenomenal. It reminds me a lot of Third Space in that you wouldn't know the brand was over 20 years old. Like it would just seem so relevant and on the pulse all the time. So sometimes you're like, people think Third Space is new, right? They're like, oh, it's a new chain. And you're like, no, it's created in, I don't know, 2002 or, whatever, something like that. And you're like, no way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really
yeah.
interesting because I think it's so often in this industry, and I could talk about nightclubs and the decline of nightclubs in this country a long time, having spent far too much time in nightclubs
Right.
when I was younger, in local nightclubs, and I just think they're a great hub.
Yeah, it's a
I would
shame.
say,
I do think it's a shame.
yeah,
I think there is something in that era of your life, like,
I think that community of meeting people organically, of having gathering spot. I don't know. I just think there's something to be said, and I think it defines that time of your life.
It's nice the world's got healthier, but I do think I wouldn't, even though I'm teetotal now, but I wouldn't advocate for an 18-year-old to be completely teetotal and not enjoy that phase of your life.
I think there's a lot of the memories you have, aren't they, of those big nights. And
it's great fun.
I'll tell you what's interesting is how that industry's changed. I mean, obviously we'll come on to leisure in a minute, but because they're doing sort of afternoon nightclubs and stuff like that now, aren't they? My ex-wife went to one not long ago, and it was like 3 o'clock in the afternoon start.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah,
everyone's thinking about their circadian rhythms and stuff, aren't they?
Yeah, my friends invited me to one of those the other day, and I was like, oh, we're not at that stage. We're not at that stage, surely, are we? Where we're doing that. But no, I just thought it was interesting what you were touching on there of almost, and that was why I was sort of saying, well, what does the cycle look like? Because I think there's so many operators in the fitness industry don't really know they're not relevant until it's like, you're not relevant anymore. It's after the event, and then they've got backfill, almost take it back to the entire estate, and it's like, blimey, we're not the hot thing anymore. How do we get to back being the hot thing? Rather than, and it's interesting, you have to look at the weekly numbers, right? Okay, we need to be on top of this. We need to be on top of this.
You said a word there, backfill, which is struck a chord with. We've got a talk at PerformX, which obviously will come on to PerformX, but I've been we've got a talk about community building, and community is obviously a new big buzzword in the sector.
Yeah.
We've almost gone access only to some extent, and then the demand is shifting now towards people don't have an office anymore. We're all probably sat at home, where we are now, and you would have used to be surrounded by a team of people regularly. You'd you'd socialize, you'd be probably going to the pub tonight, it's Friday night, pubs are mostly closed, so people are now looking at that social space as the gym. So the gym's got a big role to step in there. But we've got some really good brands talking on community building. One of them is Pure Sport. One is Rad, and one, and Represent, and brands like that are just community first. Like, and something he said to me was like, because I think there's some lessons to learn for our sector there, but something he said was that most brands will like build a brand, say it's an e-commerce brand or whatever, and then backfill community by trying to bring in influencers and do campaigns once you've reached a certain size, whereas they built community first. So it's like, and something that he also said is like they don't have ROI stats on it. So it's like they do a run club twice a week, regardless of if anyone turns up, because it's something they authentically want to do. So I'll run every Wednesday and Sunday. Whoever joins me is welcome, and that got to 700 people in London sometimes. So in its prime, yeah. So it just shows like they're building it out something they love, and then the product is associated to that. And I think that was the power of what we did right when you hit it right with a nightclub, is that you were the place people wanted to go. You can't just go, what's trending, we should do that. And I watched other people do it, and people would copy what we were doing, because we had a really good team. Like, I'm not taking credit for it, but we had guys that would spend a lot of time researching New York and going over to LA and seeing like these really trendy bars and being like, okay, that's next. And like part of my job would be to research what drinks need to be on the menu, what the marketing messages around that, and like what's the activation, and what are people interested in, what is that customer doing right now. And a lot of that translates into what I do now with PerformX, is just an obsession over where are the customer right now, what do they care about. And I built a really strong advisory board of a mix of those people. So you've got kind of John Penny from Third Space, who I'd say is someone who's absolutely on the cusp of this, is like, what is going on. He is the customer, him and his team are the Third Space customer, so they are all living and breathing it. So if they're not told High Rocks is trending, they're all doing High Rocks. Do you know what I mean? They're not told biohacking is trending, they're all biohackers, because they're all testing, how do I improve my metrics, what's my wearable telling me. And so they are people that, and if they're hearing about something and it's not quite right, they want to go out to LA and test it out and unpack it and understand it. So then I can hear from the horse's mouth, like, what is interesting to you when I'm building my show, rather than me going, oh, what do I think? Or, that kind of thing. You can have a really strong team and very varied people, but also like the customer that should be at the show, like designing it for them, rather than getting feedback and going, yeah, show was all right, probably wouldn't come back next year. You're actually going, you're getting people going, schedule is spot on, because I told you that's what I wanted to hear.
I was going to say, it must be a nightmare trying to create 2 full days of talks, because it's not just in one hall. You know what I mean? You've got so much going on.
We got 80
trying to
find
really stages. Good talks and like you say, relevant, I guess, is the thing, because there's plenty of good speakers out there, but are they still relevant, or have they been seen 100 times that people don't? You know what I mean?
Fresh. Something we try and do
exactly.
So yeah.
And how do you generally go about that? Because I can imagine you spend the whole year looking and finding and sort of going, right, who's hitting the marks at the minute.
Yeah, I think so. So to give you the overview, we've got 4 stages and 3 streams. So our primary focus is the C-suite, the decision makers of the big gym chains. From your David Lloyds to your Third Spaces to and I've got a list of kind of 800 of those key people that come to the show. That'll probably be even more this year, but it's like the decision makers. And if you're a Life Fitness, Hammer Strength, or a Gym 80, or it's their kind of key accounts, key customer base. So they're the kind of the main stage audience, as it were. And then for them, it's like, as an operator or a buyer, understanding what's going on, what is changing, what are the big shifts that they need to be aware of. And the way we try and see it is, with the 2 days, they take their head out of the trench and have a look around, and we want to give someone super credible and interesting. For example, it's like what's the playbook for GLP-1? What do we do about these jabs everyone's getting to lose weight? What's our opinion on that, and who's an expert that we could speak to? Or, you know, what is this whole longevity buzz that our customers are telling us they want? What do we do about that? Because they seem to be going and spending £200 a month down the road having some kind of cryo ice bath experience and blood work, and like, but what is that? Why are we losing out on that money, and what's our role? How can we incorporate that? You know, that kind of thing. So we try and, you know, what's the whole AI thing? How do we capitalize on that? Where's the line? Where do we, you know, so for me, it's like main stage is like almost like a blueprint of what's next, what's happening in the next 12 months, 5 years, bit of a, you know, crystal ball of what's going on. But my main thing is always like, who's doing it, who is actually living and breathing that, rather than like someone, I guess, just not scaremongering, but going like, oh shit, AI is coming.
Yeah, who's got the theory or who's got the practice, and really
Yeah.
you want someone with a practice, don't you? That's
Who's delivering excellence in that. And that's where, like, for example, 2 years ago, the whole recovery and social well-being thing was like kind of just a murmur. So we flew over Jonathan Leary, who's building that for In Remedy Place in the US, and like, he was outstanding headliner because he hung out right till the end of the after party, and he was just giving people advice. He's like, look, I don't want to own this space, I want to own 10 premium clubs globally, but I'm happy for recovery and longevity to be viral. You know, I want more and more people to find out what to do. So he was literally just giving away all his tips and advice. And, you know, someone was saying, how do I do it on a much cheaper scale at my independent gym? And he's going, well, the basics are, if you get one of these, two of these, and one of them, and, you know, that kind of thing. So that to me was really powerful, but it's actual genuine insight. And then you hear people say, you know, I was with John last week at the new third space, and he's like, I fitted out this room, but all the kit I found for it, I met at PerformX, because you were able to deliver like leading kit. So it's that synergy between the stage and the show floor. You know, we've got to talk on like fitness racing and how do you, which one's right for you? How do we make, you know, how do we package that up? And, you know, and then you've got the suppliers know on the gym floor that that's a theme and people are buying into it. So they're selling setups that you can go, right, you know, this is a fitness racing setup. And
do you have to work out then? Because I can imagine this is, you almost want the talks to relate to the people you got on the floor, but you also want to keep it exciting. So you don't necessarily just want a kit supplier coming and doing a talk, but you also want to have that relevance that's going to have create the conversation on the floor as well, don't you?
Yeah, so this is our differentiator. So we're very strict. Most events, I've heard every event globally, and this isn't like saying what's right or wrong, but how the model for most events works is that as a key sponsor, you would get 3 stage talks or 4 panel spaces, and then that might be a salesperson. So you're just sat watching salesperson from exactly, and then that reduces first of all, it reduces obviously the initial thing is bad feedback from that session wasn't very useful. I've wasted 45 minutes of my time listening to a salesman pitch that I could have got on the phone or on his website. And then the knock-on effect of that over the years is that this show isn't actually that useful for me, and I'll send my number 2, and then the number 2 isn't, you know, so you have this knock-on effect that you're not bringing enough value. So the important thing for me is that my commercial team and my team is a separate conversation. So I look after the product evolution, he looks after bringing the money, and we don't talk. So he's not saying to me, oh, these guys have given us this much, can they have this and this? And it's always a hard no, however much is dangled, because I think you've got to look at the long-term future of it. And I think that probably, you know, but just going back to our previous conversation, it's probably seeing the writing on the wall of the nightclubs and knowing that you need to keep things highly quality, highly credible, otherwise things won't last, you know. So
I guess it's on that, and it's good to take a step back inside a couple of questions that I wanted to ask you. I guess what you're really touching on there is it's the ROI for everyone involved, really, isn't it? It's not just the exhibitors. You know, you need to make sure that you've got a product that you've got decision makers going at. You haven't got a room full of, obviously, PTs, club managers, and everything. That's great, but I guess you want the people in front of them who are like, actually, we are going to make a decision on the kit and you know, and those people. And then at the same time, I guess anyone who's just going just because they're interested, it's always that ROI of your team's time coming out of your club of, everything has a cost associated. Going to the event has a cost. So I guess you have all of those plates to spin on making sure that if they're spending half an hour listening to a talk, they're actually getting something out of it rather than half an hour of being sold to, as you said, which is
exactly.
the last thing you want.
And if someone's paid for something, like most shows will allow you to pay, then you're entitled to pitch, right? Because you've paid. So we don't do that model for a reason, because then we don't allow pitches. So if there is, for example, someone really interesting within someone's team, like someone has an external expert, like for example, we're discussing at the moment with MyZone, because they've brought in an incredible like behavior change specialist. So like that, for example, is really interesting, because they can introduce us to someone that is a niche expert in their field that we couldn't otherwise probably get hold of, that wants to come and share her expertise on that. She's not going to come and talk about why you need to buy X, Y, and Z, but she is going to bring huge value. So it's harnessing your network well, because they can open incredible doors, and it's looking at them as partners, because you can say, look, what we want you to win, you want us to win. What can you how can we both win out of this? And they buy into it, really, because they other shows it's not that same conversation. It feels more transactional. Yeah.
So and again, taking it back to a point you were touching on earlier, and I just wanted to, I mean, one of our recurring themes that we have through the pod of whichever area of the industry it is, community, it always comes, we always end up talking at some point about community and community building and the importance of it in the industry, and how there are certain operators, and we're not here to say certain operators have their models, and it's possibly not built at community building as such. It's a slightly different model. I understand that. But can you just expand a little bit more? Because I think we moved on a little bit quickly on the talks and what you're doing and the focus that you have at PerformX on community building. Because that's our, we work with a lot of clubs. We work with smaller operators. We work with mid-size operators, and the focus is building community and the importance of it, and how difficult it is when you have operators who come in who are just volume led and aren't so focused on that. But that's obviously critical, and that's where our industry should really, I feel like it should be going. So can you just sort of expand on what areas you're covering on that PerformX?
Yeah, of course. So I think it's a talk I'm really personally looking forward to. But we've got Dan Williams, who is the founder of WIT, which was a brand basically built on community, and how deeply they understood the CrossFit market and spotted the gap that everyone wanted the US clothes, and then bringing them the clothes, exclusively launching them into the UK, and creating this real drop culture environment, and creating events around everything they did. And so he's kind of a real expert in this field, but he's also super connected to some of the people that are doing that at a really high level, especially in London, in these kind of very innovative brands. And I've had he's introduced me to 3 or 4 really good panelists, and I've had a good chat with each, but it's something that fascinates me as well. So I was kind of digging into what each of them's ethos is to community building. And some of the things that stuck with me is, for example, it's like, as I was kind of sharing around the pure sport stuff, but he had 4 kind of real key pillars to community building. And I think the thing it comes, I'll talk to you about the RAD example as well. Actually, RAD is fascinating, because it's a deep understanding of who your community are, and they've kind of identified that their buyers or influencers are their coaches. So where ours would be the C-suite, theirs is like these kind of coaches, and the coaches, the challenge they face is that they train at awkward times on their own, because you finish the class and then you're all so they create like almost like coaching classes where you all come together. You can have a coffee, you chat after, you have a big session, and they give you a load of free rad gear. and you're kind of their ambassador group. But it's beyond just going, okay, that person's an influencer, let me send them some stuff. You're actually deeply understanding that person and solving their problem and uniting them with like-minded people, and then they're going to just advocate for the brand so heavily and be real ambassadors. The pure sport example was, I think it's like he said, these pillars, which is like to form a community, everyone needs a shared identity and sense of belonging, which to him was just the love of running. Everyone in our community loves running, and they're selling, at the time it was CBD products, and now it's electrolytes and all sorts. So, that product revolves around that. But, the amount of people you see on a weekly basis wearing a Pure Sport Run Club t-shirt just keeps that brand top of mind, because people love the brand and they associate, they're not just thinking, oh, it's a good electrolyte or whatever. They're actually going, I love that brand. It means something to me. And then that run club went global. Like I think they did them in New York and in all sorts. And he said consistency, it's consistency, consistent location, things like that, just the obvious stuff of just like keeping it going. And then I went along to Represent, which is one of my favorite fashion brands, but we've had them involved in the show a few times. We try and always have an element of culture and what's happening in society, as opposed to just, like that, just that extra little 5% of like, what is going on? What does the culture care about right now? And Represent was a great example of that. So they launched they're a streetwear fashion brand primarily, but the owner got into his fitness in lockdown in a big way, and then created a line of clothes because he wanted something that represented him, that was like cool, and like he just didn't feel that was available in the market, and just like clothes you could wear to the gym, but also to a meeting and to something else. And, and that was the kind of ethos behind what he created. But then he created a real movement around it. And they've got a head of community like role in their team, which I think is an important thing to note for operators, is having this kind of, it's not just a part of the marketing team's job, maybe, but there is this person that just cares about the community, and it's this guy, and I went along to one of his community events, and I was so fascinated, because we've been chatting about this kind of conversation beforehand, and I said, what is it that he does so great? I was chatting to some of the guys in there, because they love it, they absolutely love it, they feel like it's their people, this is my people, and he just said it's like he's just himself, like he is just himself. It's sometimes not like a big agenda or a plan, or like it's just, let's hang out as mates, because we've all got this shared thing in common, that we care about like fashion is how we've connected, and we all want to dress in a similar way, but we've all of a similar mind. And I think their evolution from that into the fitness bit is this kind of discipline and driving yourself to be better and that kind of thing. So quite interestingly, he's evolved a fitness guy into a wellness, a fashion guy into a fitness guy, because he's actually inspired loads of lads to get into fitness and follow his journey, because he wasn't, he was in a darker place, and then he discovered fitness, and now he's like absolutely thriving. And a lot of these lads, like, he openly shared that journey, and some of these lads are like doing the gym for the first time, or taking up running and wearing his kit, and to the point where I was chatting to John about this last week, and he said he did the last High Rocks, and it was literally the uniform of High Rocks. Like, every single person is wearing Represent 247, because they buy into what that brand is all about. It's not even about looking cool, which, it does look good, but you're living and breathing that ethos of what that is all about. And it's like, it brings you all together, so that you can see that that's the heartbeat of community done very, very well. Like, would you get it tattooed on you, is a good phrase. Like, do you care about it that much? Like, and we used to have that in some of the bars. People would get the brand name tattooed on them, because the ethos behind that you're all in it together, and this is incredible what we're building, and there's so much passion behind what we do. It's beyond a job or a hobby people are meeting their friends for life through these kind of things. Like, there's really nice stories where someone moved over from New Zealand, and she went to the Pure Sport Run Club, and now she's got like her eight best friends in London she's met through this running community. And people are doing dating run clubs, and so it's just, I think it's a case of like doing something that you genuinely care about, not just doing it to tick a box. And another thing that really struck with me is but two of them I spoke to don't have an ROI target. So they are just a community builder. So it's like, if my job was just to go out and be the person that knew all the gym chains and all the suppliers and all the independent gyms, and there was no ROI target, I'd just be the community guy. And I'm just there to build really good connections and contacts with people. And I think something in that is really powerful, like especially for the chains that could afford that. It's just having someone that gets it and understands what's going on the pulse all the time, because that is a part of my role, but it's a chunk of my role, and then there's other bits to it, because we're still a startup kind of thing. But I think it is that importance of like obsessing over the finer detail, but also just knowing them as friends. So you could be like, we're releasing this hoodie, what do you think? And people can be like, oh, I don't like it, it's a bit same as the last one, or we're into this now, and you're getting that live feedback. You've got people.
There was a great example, Giles, of I can remember, because obviously my age, I was there when we first started doing all the social media stuff, and there was a really good example of a company in America that did this online, and they didn't actually, they were a shoe company, so they did children's shoes and stuff like that, and they actually built the community first, and then started selling the shoes, and it got that big that it almost became an American-wide mums group.
Right.
It got that big. It was a mums group, and in the end, they didn't design any of their own shoes. They basically asked the group, and the group were designing the shoes.
Wow.
And the sales went up exponentially for this business. And what they did, their whole approach was about community first. We'll build this community. Obviously, early days of Facebook, but they built that. Got about 400,000 mums on this page, really early doors, and then they didn't have to worry about the sales because this community was so big that the parents weren't going anywhere. They were just going literally through the shoe shop. It was an incredible story. And
well, I think it'd be sort of remiss of me. So obviously a lot of my career, Ryan, obviously, as you know, has been, I've worked a lot with Anytime Fitness, Giles. I've been supplier and franchisee. I've done a long Anytime Fitness journey. But you go over to America in particular, and the first thing that blew me away, I think, and this was so I done my initial training. I was very early on in the journey, and we didn't have training over here, so they sent us to America. On the training sessions over there, they've got a tattooist in the next room, and they have it at the conference. And you've got people there who've just signed their franchise agreement. They haven't opened a club yet, but they are members of Anytime Fitness or staff at Anytime Fitness. They are so ingrained in this community that they're queuing up to get their tattoo. You go to the conference, you've got 3-hour-long queues there for people to get an Anytime Fitness Running Man tattoo. And you think that is power on the brand. That is people who are really, really bought into it. And actually, one year I was in that queue. I'd luckily, probably in retrospect, I didn't get to the front of the queue, but I was in that queue at one point. So they must have done a good job. But
it's the same in the boutiques, isn't it? Like a lot of people will have that love for a Soul Cycle in the US, and Barry's, they get a Barry's tattoo. It's like I'm Soul Cycle for life. Like that's my people. I train every morning there, and it's really cool actually. But it's definitely a skill in being able to build that. And I think what I kind of see as well is it's all in the people. And if you read about like social media these days, and Instagram put an announcement out the other day that it's kind of like AI has killed what they originally designed Instagram for, which was this beautiful aesthetic, and now it is much more authenticity and buyer founded businesses, personal brand, that over everything kind of thing. So people want to resonate with the person, so that community builder, that owner, they want to see the ins and outs, the horrible bits and the good bits, not just this polished thing. So I think that resonates in the same way. They want to know who that community host is. They don't just want to be invited to an event that's, this brand. Like, people care. And I think someone said to me recently, quite a big brand that has big budgets were like, community hosts are the new influencers for them, because if they can say, we're doing an event, bring your community, and then they turn up with 200 people, 550 people, whatever it is, that are like an advocate for that person. It's not rent a crowd, because it's so authentic, and it's, if that's alignment is so strong, whereas you can get an influencer to shout out something and it won't do anything because people are over that a little bit, you know what I mean? So not necessarily always, but there's a bit more mistrust around that. But if someone's
Yeah.
got a community, and especially that in-person stuff, and this is where I feel with like, I think AI is fantastic, and I went to a kind of session on it yesterday, and I think the power of it will be brilliant. But I also think people will bounce back and crave in person more than ever. So events, community, real, the novelty. One day you'll pay extra to get served by someone in a restaurant because
Sounds crazy, doesn't it?
sick of this robot everything. We're human people at the core. We want to be around people, and so much of our life now is quite isolated by design. You're like, oh, it's convenient to be at home, it's convenient to have my food all delivered, it's convenient to not have to queue up for my coffee, I'll order it on the app. But then those moments of inconvenience are living. That's what life is all about. Like, that is actually, you have to wait for someone else to cross the road, have a chat with them. That those little moments are what you
Isn't
miss.
it funny how human contact is potentially going to become a premium?
Yeah.
So that you know, what I mean, your basic service is going to be your AI and automation, and then you're going to have what we now have as boutiques, because that's your personal service. That's almost going to continue because you're going to pay for that human connection.
There'll be no
And
staff, and yeah, you can see it already, the early signs of it, and it makes sense because it does make a lot of sense. But people will miss it. People will really crave that. And if you can build something genuinely very authentic and with a strong community at the heart, not just saying you've got a community, but actually like you turn up somewhere and it is your people, it's your like-minded people, which is a skill. It's an art to do. I think that is such a superpower kind of going.
But that's the point there, isn't it? So, sorry, go on, Ross.
I think I was just going to say that it just reminds me almost, and it's a really great point that companies are bringing on, community leaders, people they're understanding the importance of that headcount and putting that in that budget. Because you go back even sort of 5 years, and or 10 years, Ryan will probably remember this more than Giles, but well-being would just be a very small section of what HR do, as opposed to a well-being specialist or really talking mental health in the workplace. We're not going that far back that would be your HR person in a company would have that as a little bit of their job. That would be their responsibility in addition to doing the rest of it. And it just reminded me of that, and that's a great evolution because, like I say, it's not that long ago that we didn't have specialists within companies, and it wasn't being taken as a priority. So
I know Glenda really well. Obviously, Glenda, Giles, and obviously the work that she does, and you just think, like Russ is saying, 10 years ago, that was, I mean, she was well ahead of her game 10 years ago because she was doing it then. But I mean, look at it now; it's almost the buzzword and companies now are employing people to do it. She works with banks and all sorts of stuff, bringing her in to do it, and you think. It's crazy how far that's gone. Like you say, Russ, it used to just be HR doing something nice, didn't it? It
if they've got a little bit, if they've got a little bit of time,
morning.
Exactly. It would be almost lip service, or it wasn't taken seriously. So it's just reminding me of that when you're talking now about community, and it's just a similar evolution. So yeah.
Just quickly, Giles, because obviously last year you guys moved up to the NEC.
Yeah.
Has that been big for you? Has it worked out well? I mean, it works better for me. So I'm based in Yorkshire. I don't have to go to London. So I'm all for it. But has that worked out? What brought about that change?
Yeah, I think it was definitely something I was quietly fearful of, because I think Tobacco Dog is super cool. It was something our investor felt very strongly about from the start, that we'd be better off in a that kind of space, and I thought London was our kind of one of our strengths. So there's venue and location to me was like, we're going to lose something here, but actually in hindsight I would not go back at all. It was freedom to build what we wanted. So we had some like incredible spaces, stages. Like Tobacco Dock is cool, but it's very restrictive with these like strange glass rooms.
You've got those little you've got those little alcoves, and it's a great. I get your point, and we were discussing this before, that it's such a cool venue, but probably for what you're looking to do.
You go downstairs, you don't come back. You never go back down there. even us, we got lost in the venue sometimes. You're like, oh, you're in the second bit, or it's not the easiest place to navigate. And I think looking at what we do, which is we are ultimately a connecting show, we're a networking show. We want the right people to meet the right people and to watch the right stuff. If they can't find the stage or they don't know where the exhibitors are, or it's novelty, over kind of making the magic happen. And I think because what a lot of I haven't heard one person say it was a step backwards. Everyone said it was a lot better. And I think we've able to, because we built in somewhere cool and creative, we've created a personality for the brand, and then we've been able to bring that personality into a new venue. So we had DJs on, we had purple, like not red carpet but purple style strip going around. We had the whole place blacked out. We had really cool stages. We had amazing speakers. Every brand felt the need to like level up and go big and go really cool, instead of just like, oh, I'll buy a small space and put my bit of kit here. It's like, I need to deliver because this is PerformX, this is cool, this is an opportunity for me. And we're trying to bring back the launch culture, which you'll remember from Ursa and FIBO, was like that would be where you would find out about the new products kind of thing. Whereas now I think because of the age of the speed, you can just launch something and get things out and have a showroom, or show something digitally, or people on the road or whatever. People just launch things whenever it's ready. But we're bringing back that culture with the gym of the future. So we're saying like, either
wait for PerformX and launch it there.
And we've had a few brands do it, which is super cool. But I think if we can be that, because we're the first show of the year, wait till Feb and then make a big splash with your new product. And we've got this centerpiece, which is the gym of the future, which someone can walk through. And the long-term vision for that is almost like, you walk in, it scans your wearable, it tells you and I would have a different workout because I've been getting about 4 hours sleep at the minute. So it would say, go home. Yours would say, right, go in and do your warm up and then do this and do that. And, that kind of thing. Everyone's journey would be different. And then you've got a strength zone, you've got a recovery zone, you've got, all the latest kit, you've got the biohacking bit, you've got a community experience, you're kind of showcasing how AI would interact with your experience. And, so we want to showcase that, and also have space for like innovative brands that wouldn't necessarily have the budget to do a show. So almost have this like Dragon's Den style startup zone within that. Cool. Yeah. So that's kind of the longer term vision for it. This is our second year delivering Gym of the Future. So I'm sure it will be an evolution from last year, but it's good to see the end, have the end in mind when we're building it. But go on.
I guess maybe you've answered this question I was just about to ask, Giles, but how much do you kind of feel like you represent where the industry's going, and you had this written down, and the future of the industry, versus representing where the industry sits now? So maybe you've answered that, but sort of expanding that a little bit more. You've got the gym of the future, but how much are you representing now versus what is going to come around the corner?
I think we try and be so our objective is to be the business of fitness show. So we want someone to come in and have actionable insight they can take away to apply to their business on Monday morning. So some of it needs to be where we're at right now. What is the best practice? Who's smashing it? Who is absolutely delivering what that thing is? But I think if you look at like the longevity piece as a good example of this conversation, is like, okay, last year we got Jeff Zwiefel over, who is head of Life. He's president at Lifetime, which is, I guess the third space equivalent in the US, or a David Lloyd equivalent, but they're huge. They're absolutely huge. And they've created this 40 grand a year longevity membership called Miura. So we got Jeff over to explain what is that? What does that look like? So we're saying, like, here is the trend, you're all interested in it, but who is best in class at that and can tell you how to do it? So I'd say it's like we're trying to be futuristic by not by conceptualizing, but by finding best in class. So the previous year was obviously, as I said, Jonathan Leary, who's smashing that social well-being, high-end longevity recovery, and how can you scale that back or up and down. Similarly with Jeff, who is absolute best in class, and then who can do that. And you can see like Ollie Patrick is a leader in that space, but he's now done it on a So our evolution from that talk is like, where is it at now? And we've got an independent gym. Res Barad, a good friend of mine, who's created a health hub in like near Camden. You've got potentially someone at like Ollie Patrick or someone at Everyone Active who's done it on a more council, much more affordable budget level. And then you can look at like someone like a Jeff or a John who's doing it at a very high end. Let's charge, good money and deliver the top, all the blood tests and all the intricacies of it. So like, what is that evolution, from idea to now? A lot of the industry are looking at this product and what do we do, and also answering the questions like, what is the best practice and where do we need to, what bit can we own, or what bit do we need to outsource? Do we need medical help if we're doing, what's the line of like what a PT's role is within that, and that kind of thing. So answering those questions, but using that with real examples of people that are successful and exploring that route kind of thing, because it's especially when stuff's brand new. It is like the good thing with Jeff is like he'd been exploring it with Lifetime for about 10 years, so he's like, oh yeah, we tried to do that membership and that failed, and we tried this and we tried that, and now we've hit this, and the hockey stick moment for biohacking, whatever you want to call it, is now mainstream. So the consumer is demanding biohacking, or they read, like, knowledge is a lot more accessible. This is a good phrase that stuck with me, is like, the knowledge is a lot more accessible, but a lot of it is just snippets. So you haven't necessarily got deep knowledge, but the consumer knows they want to go in an ice bath, but they don't know what an ice bath does. They want the selfie in the ice bath or the video climbing in it, but they don't know, what is it good for my health? Is it, so then that's where the role of the gym can evolve into and there's a really good Richard Boyd flew over from Australia last year, and he was talking about kind of how a PT can become a recovery coach as well, and like factoring that in and not being afraid, like I said, to say you need to go home, like you're knackered. Whereas a lot of people will think, I just need to smash this guy up because he thinks that's what a PT session is. If he's not sweating, he's not got his money's worth. So actually being that holistic health coach that says, like, let's look at your wearable. You don't really understand it. I understand it. I can tell you that your HRV is up, and this is, and even to the point where we had Kristen Holmes last year, who was the chief scientist of Whoop, and she opened she opened the question by saying, like, who knows what HRV actually is? Like not to humble anyone, but just to be like, where do we start with this? I don't want to go massively into science if half the room doesn't even know what that is. So I'm happy to start from there and explain that. So it is just that, and the obviously the skill set will vary so heavily. You might get some outstanding PTs that have science degrees, and you might get others that don't. So it's kind of navigating that. So that's where we try and long answer, but like, we try and look 5 years ahead, but also look at, like, we don't want it just to be a conceptual show. We want it to be like those chains to come and be like, one of them, one of our key VIPs has just messaged me now going, really looking forward to it. Glad you've got talks on fitness racing, GLP-1 and something else. And I was like, great, we've hit the mark, because he's penciled in 3 talks that he needs to be at for his job. To succeed at his job, he needs to understand those 3 areas, because that's what he knows his customers are asking for. That's the next business opportunity for him. So that's kind of the sweet spot for us, is we're bringing value. We don't want it to just be like, oh, a gym could be whatever. Like, we want it to be, what do you actually care about right now? And then we can sprinkle in some, like, more conceptual stuff if it's relevant, but we want the show to be really useful for you, kind of thing. And we have got a talk on, like, shifts and trends by Adrian Adhami, she's really good on terms of, like, obsessing over the actual customer. So if it's Gen Z, or if it's, that kind of thing, what are they into? What are they buying? And she's created it into 5 different categories of consumer. And one of those is like luxury wellness consumer, who is just, instead of spending on a Rolex and a Porsche like people used to, they now want to be in these, like, amazing 8-star hotels in Dubai where you know, the right sunlight hits your eye at the perfect time when you wake
Well, I
up.
read something the other week, and that was very much about as the new generations are coming through, they're actually searching for experience, not
Yes.
product.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
they're more than happy, like you say, they're more than happy not to have the Rolex and the Porsche, but to go on a safari, go and have these amazing experiences where normally we would just go to Spain or Portugal. They want to go to these things and live the moment. And I think that's really powerful to look at. But something from a fitness perspective, we need to have a look at, because it's not equipment they're after. And I talk about this all the time. I think Russ gets bored of it, the amount I talk about it. But it's about the experience, and
Yeah.
are we creating the experiences in our facilities? Because people aren't. We have to understand that health and fitness is also entertainment. It's also
Mm.
hospitality. We're in that hospitality field, but
Yeah.
for some reason we've not followed the hotels, and we've not followed the
Mm.
restaurants and the nightclubs in that going, we need to create these experiences. So when you talk about third space and stuff like that, who are doing it, they almost stand out a mile.
Yeah, yeah. Brings me on to a good
Because
point. This year
you
we've integrated with, because we've seen this trend happening so much, we've integrated with the spa world. So we're working with Jacqueline Hughes, who is our sort of lead on this element of the project, but she's then bringing in spa leaders. We're having spa talks on the stage. We're kind of going, what can you learn from us? What can we learn from you? How can you build decent gyms in a tiny space? How can we deliver an experience that isn't just someone walking in and seeing a load of trainers by the door and a coach doing his stretches? Like, how can he learn of that touch point that's a greeting, that's consistent, that's high quality, that's, you know, the stuff that's drilled in at a spa is, you know, you're going to get this warm experience in a tailored
but it's the same. You can pull
seven-step
that.
journey, you know, which
Yeah,
we
exactly.
don't necessarily do that as standard. We just, you know, we just have
No,
our own
no, we
way.
don't.
Yeah.
For some reason, our industry doesn't do customer service that well as an overall industry,
And
and it's maybe
we
bringing
get
in
by
best.
because we've got a lot of growth minded people, so they're good people. It's full of good people, so we get by
Yeah,
naturally at it because it's, you're walking into a nice environment with someone that wants you to win.
Mm.
So it does just happen by osmosis. But if we layered in some standards like they've got, and the US is obviously like notoriously elite at those standards.
Mm.
So it's like, how can we bring in, and that's where Jacqueline kind of specializes. She worked a lot on the cruise ships and stuff like that. So her network's incredible there. And then we're looking at these places, and she's like, there's just this huge gap. This is really interesting point, is there's this huge gap in what people will pay for fitness. So we're undercharging for what we are. People are paying
100%.
£15, you know, for a whole month of it, whereas a spa day, you know, I've forked out 200 odd quid, 300 quid, and that's not even an expensive one, you know, and that's like one day. So, you know, and you could spend 15 grand on an experience in a, you know, luxury, you know, hotel in somewhere, you know, it's crazy. Whereas we don't have that kind of top end experience as mainstream. And if you do, you're expecting the world for it. So it's like, how do we increase our value? How do we increase what people perceive us as? Because we are changing lives. Like, ultimately, we are the most valuable thing you can get. You're changing lives, and if you're layering in community, then you're being that person's ability to make friends and not be isolated, and meet a potential like-minded partner that also wants growth. And, you know, so we've got a lot of strengths as a sector, but we're just,
That's a very
yeah.
interesting point about the partner stuff. You know, because we're all working from home. I can remember when I was in the office and stuff. I'm sure the stat was something like 60% of people meet their future partner or wife or whatever at work. And you think, well,
Yeah.
no one's at work anymore.
No, it'll all
So
be
other than
dating apps
internet,
now, won't it? It'll all be dating apps now. But dating apps aren't. I think they have their challenges. They're not the best thing ever. You know,
no,
they're yeah.
thankfully I haven't tried it, so I've not needed that. But we're running out of time, Giles. We could have you on for another hour easily.
Yes.
Um, but I guess for me, in terms of where PerformX is going, obviously we've got PerformX coming up at the end of February, which obviously everybody should get down to, even if it's just for one day to go and see what's about, get involved in the talks. I know you've done the tickets for free this year,
Yeah.
which is, I guess it's probably a good question to ask actually. What was the mindset behind that?
Yeah, so I think it's a luxury that we can now afford because we're a nice established size. So we've got a good enough revenue from a good exhibitor base, some really, really key partners and big brands supporting the show. So now we can afford to, not have an entry fee. But I think the mission is to make this content accessible for the whole sector. So we don't want that barrier. And I think especially if you look at some coaches, some entry level beginner coaches that are maybe a bit more considerate of how they're spending, and they're going, well, I'll lose a day's wage and then it's 50 or 100 quid to get in and things like that, and travel. We're going, look, it's completely free. Let's just get as many people in this room as possible. And they are the future of the sector. This is people, you've got to be quite ambitious to want to come to something like this, because it's a learning and networking day. We want those people in the room because the coaches are the future, the future gym owners or the future leaders or the future startups, that kind of thing. So we want that next generation feeding through. And I think it's a good learning for the senior leaders in the rooms as well, to see what people. I remember one of our buyers saying to me, they like to just walk around and see what people are gathering round, because it's all very well them going, oh yeah, this machine, but actually if everyone was picking up this thing and all swinging and going, having a go on that, like they're going, that's interesting, like that's my target audience, they're all playing on that. So it's nice to see that kind of thing. It's that kind of full circle, and they can have conversations, they can see again, it's that cultural thing. You're understanding your community because they are your community, sort of thing, in the next generation.
I think it's a great move. I think it's good. It makes it really accessible for everybody. So between that and the fact that you're in Birmingham and the transport's really good and everything like that, I think you've done really well.
Russ, it's got airports. It's got everything.
Oh yeah, airports, trains.
The NEC is crazy.
Hotels are there.
It's like a village, isn't it? It's like a
and it's not in the big smoke, which doesn't excite me.
No, Tobacco Dock was cool, but it was in the middle of nowhere. Even for me, I'm 20 minutes from London. It would take me like an hour 40 to get there. Like it's 4 trains and then a 20-minute walk, and but no, it was good. I did enjoy it, but I think glad to be. It's a good move. It's definitely a good move.
Yeah, absolutely. Russ, anything to finish on?
Well, no, just if Giles could sort me out with one of those jobs where you go to New York and you try out those bars. See what's on trend. I think that would be good if you wouldn't mind sending that over later. But apart from that, no, that's everything. Fantastic chat, Giles. Look forward to PerformX and hopefully catching up there as well.
Yeah, for sure. Pleasure to be on that.
If anybody wants any information regarding PerformX, either attendance or exhibiting, I don't know whether you've got any slots left for exhibiting, Giles, but
few, very, very last few.
Yeah, so if anybody wants to, is thinking about it and unsure, all the details will be on here, or drop Giles a note on LinkedIn. But I've really enjoyed that, Giles.
Thanks
ever so much for that. We'll catch you at PerformX. We'll come and say hello. Good luck with all the planning. You've got a month to go, so I'm sure it's going to ramp up
the home stretch. Yeah,
exactly. But really appreciate your time today, and we'll catch you soon.
Pleasure to be on. Cheers, guys.
Cheers, Giles.
Thanks for that, Giles. Right, let me just stop.